what are your goals? Not goals for just for yourself, but for the company. And at what point someone else with more resource and more ability can take that to achieve the goals.
Welcome to Latinx Can, a podcast showcasing Latinx professionals who turn their dreams into realities. I'm your host, La Doctora Yanire Flores Delgado, and today I'm here with Ángel Muñoz, a serial entrepreneur who is on a mission to develop technology whose ultimate goal is the defragmentation and enhancement of the human experience. And he is here to tell you, sí se puede, my friends, sí se puede. Ángel Muñoz, welcome to Latinx Can.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Flores. This is an exciting moment for me to be on your show.
And it's exciting for us to have you as well. Thank you for sharing your time with us. Let's start by talking about your story and where your story begins.
Where my story begins, in a galaxy far, far away. My story begins in, I guess, in New York City, where I was born, and I took my first breath of air. Very close to Central Park, and I was born in Manhattan. And my parents were from the island of Puerto Rico, which is a proper way of pronouncing that, and not Puerto Rico like everybody does. And I, the first portion of my life until I was around 10 years old, I spent in New York. I went to New York City public schools, and then we moved. We moved to Puerto Rico. My father wanted to pursue his goal of opening restaurants, and he wanted to do it in Puerto Rico. So we moved there, and then I went through from elementary, intermediate, and high school there, and then I actually did 1 year of college, but it was the second year of college because I completed my first year of college when I was still in high school. So, and then I moved back to the United States at that time.
What was that like growing up in the States for about 10 years and then going to Puerto Rico, right? I think from my experience, it's the other way around. So what was that like for you?
Well, frankly, Dr. Flores, it was such a shocking experience to go from a city living to this paradise, which I didn't even realize at the time. There was just such a beautiful impact to all your senses. I just hated it. I hated being in Puerto Rico. I did not know Spanish because I spoke to my parents in English. I understood it. I couldn't read or write in Spanish. And so my first reaction for the first year was very hard because I had to, I was taking basic Spanish in fourth grade, and that was not cool. I was like isolated from the rest of the class. So that was really tough, but I discovered something about myself at that point is that I can learn very quickly. And within a year, I was starting to master the language. And when I graduated from elementary school, I graduated high honors. So it didn't, and of course, children are also mentally flexible in that way. So that's also an advantage. But I excelled in an environment that I really felt was crushing me at the time. So that was one of my first true victories. Then I loved it. Then I fell in love with the island. It was a transformation. I went from really, wanting to be back in New York City to really embracing the lifestyle of a Caribbean island and the foods, the wonderful foods. It just was an incredible experience. And I really, I was passionate about the Spanish language. I learned, I started studying classical Spanish and just threw myself at the language because I felt that it ignited sides of my imagination that were not possible to access just with English alone.
I ask you because, I think your experience of having to go into an environment where you didn't know anybody, you didn't know what the language was like, you had exposure to the culture, of course, but being immersed in the culture versus having exposure to it is very different. And I draw a parallel to young immigrants that come into the United States, right? They come, they don't speak English, they have to go into the school system, but just like you, they come in and they adapt because kids are resilient and they find a way to just make it, and I think that's a great skill to have in life.
I think so. I like having and understanding two languages and having more than one perspective. I pass that on. My daughter speaks 4 languages, Spanish, English, French, and Arabic. And my son speaks 3 languages, English, Spanish, and French. Yeah. And there's an expansion of the mind. There is your horizons just expand to such degree. I think a language to a certain degree defines the possibilities of how you perceive reality. And the more you know about any language, the more your reality expands. Yeah. So I think it's a profound impact. And I think that children that are immigrants that come to this country have that advantage. They just need to know that they do. They just take it for granted, but they have that powerful advantage, and they should tap into it.
Absolutely. And it sometimes gets seen as, I don't speak the language. I don't speak English. I have an accent. Or even the other way around. I don't speak Spanish because I have an accent, for kids that were born here and they only speak Spanish at home, for example. But it's one of the things that I like to do with this podcast is have that realization that you have an accent. That means you speak more than one language, right? It's not a limitation. It's an added bonus. And yes. I think that's really the perspective that we have to have.
Right. I always like to say that I lived in Puerto Rico enough to color my English so that I have this accent that is perceptible to people that speak perfect English. Mm-hmm. And I'm proud of it. I've never tried to erase it. Of course I could have a long time ago, but I just never attempted to because I like it. I like mispronouncing the occasional word. I just do. So it gives, for me, it's all about, it's almost like bringing more diversity. Languages actually improve through diversity. If you study languages over the centuries, you see that languages are not rigid. They change with the times and with the people who speak the language. Portuguese is a great example of that. The Spanish spoke Spanish, and then a group of people decided that they wanted to mix a little bit of French and a little bit of more colorful sounds into their language, and they organized an entire different language for that side of Spain, and now we know that it's Portuguese. So it's incredible. It really is. So I like you, think that it's an advantage. It's a mental expansion, and it's proven that your brain creates pathways that are different when you speak more than one language.
You just mentioned that you had a year of college, one formal year of college and one that you completed while you were in high school. And you're also open about the fact that you didn't finish college.
I did drop out, Dr. Flores. Yes, I did drop out of college.
Can you talk about the circumstances that led you to not finish your college degree and how that experience impacted or has impacted your life?
Well, it's definitely not the easy path. I would start by saying that it is a lot more complex. But I'll try to transport myself back to that time where I was in Miami studying at Miami-Dade Community College, and I thought that college. I had a different idea of college, and I think that that's what really started conflicting. The reality of college and what I thought about college were two different things. I thought that college was more like, a bit of a salad bar where I can study anything I wanted and learn a lot about it. So, if I wanted tomatoes today, I would pick that. So I took a variety of courses. I took calligraphy and and cooking, but I had an emphasis in computer science, and I also loved psychology and communication. So I was taking all these classes, but I was not progressing because I wasn't taking the narrow classes that I was supposed to take. So that became a little frustrating for me because there was such an abundance of knowledge and it was right there available, but the college curriculum was demanding that I stay within a specific spectrum. So when I started narrowing down to that spectrum, I found that the realities of life came knocking on my door because my parents were not paying for my college. I was, and I had to work to go to college. And I was so anxious and believed honestly that I could achieve my goals without completing that at the time. I have to be completely honest that I thought that. And then I was thrown into life and dropped out of college and realized that it was a lot harder and that people advanced faster, when I was at a job because they had college degrees. And I realized early that I may have made a dramatic mistake. And so it took 3 times the effort and really a lot of serendipity for me to land in investment banking, which is the job that really kind of ignited my potential as a person.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing that experience with us, because we were just talking about how a lot of people may think that it's not necessary to have a college education. And it's understandable because it's so expensive to pursue one in the United States. Why would you go into debt to get something that you might think won't really help you or won't offer extra advantages for a career if you want to become an entrepreneur or something like that. But I think it's also really important to be honest, like you're doing, and saying, it's a viable path. People can take it. It's just not the easy path to take.
It's definitely not. You're immediately at a disadvantage, and now you become a high school graduate and not a college graduate. It's a huge difference, as anybody knows that. I think the college, if we were to talk about the pricing of college, I think it's unfair, but that's a conversation for another interview. But I can tell you that it's worth it. I had to learn all about finance in a very short period of time. And I was competing in investment banking with college graduates. And it meant I had to work, harder, and I had to study harder just to be at the same level. And it took a long time. It took years for me to be at the same level.
Yeah. And so despite not having a college degree, you have been a successful entrepreneur and you have created a number of different enterprises, including the investment banking firm, I think when you were 24. And then you follow that by founding the first Cyberathlete professional league, and then you created Mass Luminosity. Let's talk about how each of these enterprises was created, beginning with the investment banking firm.
Yeah, actually, I joined the investment banking firm industry at 24, and I launched my investment banking firm at 29, which was about 5 years of experience in the industry. When I joined the investment banking industry, I started as a stockbroker and then moved into the investment banking department. I was just a natural at it, Dr. Flores. It's one of those happy coincidences that you actually find your calling by serendipity and luck, because it was a friend of mine who actually identified that he thought he worked at the firm and he thought I had the abilities, although I didn't have a college degree, to pursue that career. By the time I was 29, I had a reputation of being able to get deals done. I was a top producer in the industry, meaning that I excelled in sales and in deal making. And it was just, I was married to a stockbroker and an investment banker too at the time. That's still my wife today. We've been together for 36 years. we just both of us decided that we thought we could do it, and we took it, and it was, we thought about it and thought about it, and then no amount of thinking could justify it. Sometimes you have to make decisions that are bold, and you only have one reason to do it and 10,000 not to do it. And we decided to do it, and it was an incredible experience. I loved every day of owning our firm. It was called New World Investments. And we had one of our first hires was a young woman at the time called Kimberly Visurraga. And Kimberly joined the investment banking firm, and she is now the CMO of Mass Luminosity. So she's been with us all during that period of time. So that's how we did that one. While we were running that, we also were inspired by, this is not something I really talk about, but I feel like I want to give you the complete story. I was inspired by the research of Dirk Pearson and Sandy Shaw. They were both biochemists that wrote a book in the 1970s called Life Extension. And they talked about a pharmaceutical product called Dino, and I think it was Rika Pharmaceutical, if I remember that correctly, that had the patent on it, and it had expired. And they were taking this product to enhance their cognitive ability, or at least to try to produce more acetylcholine in their brain, which is a neurotransmitter that helps the synapse to transmit thoughts from one neuron to another. And with that, my wife and I partnered with two researchers. One was called Steve Pantaleo. The other one, I can't remember his name, but he owned a company called Latin, which is Latin, Life Extension, Tomorrow's Advanced Nutrition. And we took the product and made it a over-the-counter product called DMAE. And we released this product into the general audience and manufactured it, and it was a huge success. It was incredible. The product is still sold today, although we sold a long time ago. And any of your listeners, if they go to a health food store or online and look for DMAE, which stands for dimethyl aminoethanol, they will find that product. That's just a side product we did. It was incredible. It was fun, and I still take DMAE every day, still today. So, and I have no benefit from it. This is not a plug. So I buy it like just anybody else. So, and then with in the process of doing that, and then we decided to sell our investment banking firm. That was a tough decision for us because we loved it. It wasn't something we had to do. But what we observed was that people who stay in investment banking and in finance, and in the sort of the Wall Street environment for a long time, they age terribly. It's such a high pressure job, and we just met all these people. We didn't like how the way they looked, and we were like, that's not going to be us. So I was probably about, I can't remember the exact age, but I was 34 or something like that. And there was, one of our clients was a investment firm out of the UK, and they were, they accounted for a big percentage of our business, but they did not have a presence in the United States, and they were looking to have a presence. Plus they wanted our accounts also because we had some great accounts. And they made an offer that we couldn't refuse. It was a fantastic offer. And that was our first official big sale of a company. And that's how we got out of investment banking.
Yeah. I find it interesting that you took that leap of faith with your wife, right, at the time. Did that make you feel safer because you were with sort of your life companion at the time?
That's a great question. I think so. I think you're right. I think it made it. I think having Karen that's the name of my wife, involved in the business made it a little bit, made the jump a little easier. Karen and I, when the first thing that we did was when we were dating, we bought a house together and we remodeled it. We were living in this house and we were remodeling it. And my wife, Karen, likes to say that if you can survive that, you can survive anything in the relationship.
Yeah.
So that is not the way to start a relationship. I do not recommend that as a path. And then we worked really well together. We got mad at each other like it's typical of couples and all that, and things went wrong, but we have more celebrations than we had, hard times. And we also, I should say that there was another motivation behind sort of the curtains, and it was that Karen and I had decided to have children, and we did not want to raise our children in that environment where we were so busy all the time.
Yeah.
So we wanted to dedicate time to them. And so that was another reason why we decided that it was time to sell.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's as good reason as any, right? Is that you're going to bring children into the world, you might as well have time for them.
You have to. In my opinion, you have to, yes.
So then after selling New World Investments, you created the Cyberathlete Professional League. And that was the first organization to define video game competitions as professional sports. Can you talk more about how you got started in this field and what the business model was for these enterprise?
Well, so I got to transport myself back and eliminate the romanticism of the moment. Here I am, 33, 34 years old, has sold my investment banking firm for a what even today will be considered a serious number, and I did not like playing golf, still don't, and was not going to do that, and so I started playing video games. A friend of mine introduced me to a game called Doom, and then here I am analyzing these games and all that, and I realized this is the future. There's no question about it that this industry will excel and exceed every other form of entertainment. And with that, I launched first a website called Adrenaline Vault. It was a small little website that became quickly the number one website in the world when it came to anything that had to do with interactive entertainment, which is the official name of the video game industry. Mm-hmm. And that was interesting for me, Dr. Flores, because then I had a closer view of the end user, basically the people who were actually playing these games. And I realized that these people were competing with each other already. And they were doing it, in a non-established way. And they were, for bragging rights. And it occurred to me one day that we could probably formalize this process and turn it into a professional sport. And with that just vague idea, I launched the Cyberathlete Professional League back in 1997. And you're right, it was absolutely the first organization to take video games competitions, and specifically PC games, and turn them into a professional sport. What happened after that was the thing of movies. I mean, I could not believe it. It was an infectious virus that took over the entire planet right away. So we went from doing small events in the Dallas, Texas area where I live to doing events all over the world in a period of about 2 to 3 years. And did it for 12 years.
Wow. Making an analogy of a virus in the pandemic, it's kind of scary.
Maybe I need to look for another one.
But I mean, I find it interesting because I don't play video games. I grew up playing sports, and so I never had time for any video games. But my brother played a lot of video games, and we always thought that he was wasting his time, right? But knowing that now I know a little more. I'm not familiar with the video game industry at all, but I know that there are competitions now and people make a living out of it. So maybe we should have encouraged him more, and maybe
Yeah.
he could have become a star at this.
That's right. That's an interesting distinction you make, because you were an athlete, and in the early days of the Cyberathlete Professional League, which we called CPL for short, right? By the way, and in the early days of the CPL, most of our competitors were athletes, so they were not what people imagined them to be. They were not these sort of nerdy kids that didn't have any other outlet, but they were people who competed in real life and thought this was just another form of competition that required, incredible hand-eye coordination, fast reflexes, quick response rate, all these things that you and when you're using your body you use, but now they were applying that to a virtual environment. So that really was fascinating to me. Our two top players at the time, the top, I don't know, let's call them athletes. The top athletes, I just don't know what else to call them. They were both from traditional sports. One was not a semi-professional. He was a tennis player, and the other one was a hockey player. So initially it did not attract a person that did not have physical skills, but it attracted people like you that were athletes and said, oh, this is just another form of competition. And they excelled in it. So it didn't replace their sport. It just added to it. It added another avenue for them to compete.
Yeah. And I can totally tell that you develop skills in a different way, or different skills, because if I do one of those dance competitions where there's symbols on the ground and you have to step on them as the screen tells you. I'm so terrible. I'm terrible at it. My brother can beat me every time. So, I mean, I don't want to minimize the experience and the skills of these people. It's just, I wasn't familiar with it because I was always playing sports, doing sports in a professional, well, not professional, but high performance division. And so that was the Cyberathlete Professional League, right? And you also decided to sell this and then start a new company.
Yes.
Right?
We had worked for 12 years establishing the sport. There was a number of competing leagues at the time. And it was a lot of physical work for us, for my staff, for myself. Because these were location-based competitions. These were not virtual competitions. These were that was part of what the CPL was about, that you were going to compete in person. So basically the CPL became an event company, and we were doing these events all over the world. And then there were all these streams of revenue that were coming in. One was sponsorship, meaning companies that would sponsor the league to get their brands in front of this audience. And that was a large portion of it. Then there was also merchandising, which is typical of all sports. And that became another big seller for us. Then there were tickets also. People had to attend the event. And, we would sell tickets at the time were $100, and we would have 8,000 maybe people purchase them. So,
wow.
It was, and we had several events during the year. So it became a big company real quickly. And the fun of being a pioneer, that there's a point where a company is not pioneering anymore, but you're really just a business. That tired some of the people that started, and including me. And there's this group that was a Singaporean / Chinese company that wanted the business at that level. But their idea was to take our company and then take it to China, which is what they did. And they made an offer at a time that we were receptive. And so we sold the CPL.
Do you ever felt like, having a hard time of letting go of something that you created? Now, that was the CPL at that time. Before that was the investment banking firm. Do you ever have any feelings that made it really hard to take those decisions?
I have never experienced that, no. I couldn't explain why, but I've never, once I make my mind that it's time to sell something, I don't have, I lose all attachments to it. While I'm in it, I'm 100% in it. It's like, like rearing a baby.
Yeah.
But once I make a decision that it's okay to sell it and the price is right, never. A lot of people have asked me, wouldn't you want to still be involved in esports now that it's gotten so large? I'm like, no. That I'm glad that I created the path for others to prosper. So because I did well with it, so it's not like I sold it at a loss or something like that. And so no, I have to say, I know that makes me a little bit less human than most people, I think, but it's true. I have to be honest. I don't have those feelings at all. No.
So how do you go through that decision? Like, how do you, what general steps do you take to decide when it's time to sell?
I think a lot of people do a lot of research on timing, and I think that's not the priority. The priority is you have to be very clear on your goals. What are your goals? Not goals for just for yourself, but for the company. And at what point someone else with more resources and more ability can take that to achieve the goals. And you know, to see yourself in the equation all the time is probably why so many businesses fail. At one point, you have to minus your ego and yourself from the equation and say, this can run a lot better if I wasn't involved. And that is, for me, an easy process. And I can tell you, Dr. Flores, because I know a lot of people in business, that is a hard thing for the majority of business people. They just always see themselves in the equation. I don't. I've told my board of directors right now, if they can hire a better CEO than I am, go for it. If you find somebody better, I am not that person. For example, right now I'm working on this project called Beacon, Dr. Flores, that you're aware of, since we are on Beacon right now talking to each other. But if a company came around and said, hey, we can take this to 100 million people and we'll pay you this much, but we're going to continue growing, I would consider that offer and I'm not done with Beacon. And I would consider it. Of course I would consider it because it achieves my goals. So that's the thing. Do you always have to be at the finish line? I don't. I can pass on the baton to someone else and say, go for it.
I think that's refreshing.
So I think that comes from investment banking and being a stockbroker, because when you buy, somebody sells, and when you sell, somebody buys. You have sort of that transactional type of thinking, maybe, but I'm not, I'm not ego driven. So that's also important. I'm purpose driven. And if you're ego driven, then it's going to be a lot harder for you, but I'm purpose driven. So
yeah, I think that's refreshing. And I think it's I've been recently having these conversations about sort of the scarcity mentality, where some people, and I think for us immigrants, maybe not just Latinos or Latinx, but immigrants, since we come to this country and we have little, it's easy to just always be stuck in that scarcity mentality, where if we get resources, we want to hoard them, because what if they go away, right? But what the perspective that you're offering is this opportunity for letting other people also benefit from these opportunities for other people to grow, even if you're not the person leading that at that time.
Dr. Flores, you nailed it. I look at the universe as an abundant place, not as a place of poverty, but of a place of abundance. And, the more that I have, the more I can give. So that's things that motivate me as a person. Yeah, I realize that I'm sort of a kind of a different type of molecule than the average business person, but I don't emphasize money over all things. My goals are more directed into what is the experience that the users have? How can we make it better? How can we give more for less? Those are my mentality. And it makes such a difference. That's why it's so hard to compete with me, because I will take risk where others will not. And I have a clear vision of where we're going. And most companies are reacting to the circumstances. So when I say, Dr. Flores, that one day I think that Beacon will be, the number one video conferencing platform in the world, it has a lot more meaning than just wishful thinking for me. And because I will use any resource or anything that's available to us along the way to achieve those goals, because it's better, because it's already better. So it should be in front of everyone else. So when it came to the CPL, it wasn't difficult at all to let go. It was a concept that I knew that it was revolutionary. I knew that it was going to be, I was clear that it was going to be part of our culture. There was no question. I knew I was making history while I was doing it. There's no humility in that for me. I knew it. I knew I was the first there, but it wasn't about me. It was about the sport that I wanted to, and there were very capable people at the time that took the sport to even higher levels.
Yeah.
And it's great. I'm very happy. And with that kind of mentality, I started Mass Luminosity, the company that I'm working for now.
So what is Mass Luminosity, and what is your vision for the company?
Well, Mass Luminosity, the name itself is kind of interesting because from a scientific perspective, it's an astrophysics term that means that luminosity, which is actually just a measurement of brightness. It's actually a measurement. And it's an algorithm that they use or a formula they use in astrophysics that says the more light or the more luminosity that a certain class of stars, but a certain class of star has, the more mass it has. So that's the equation. It's the mass luminosity equation. So I said, so with that mentality, I did something interesting. I registered trademark Mass Luminosity, which probably is probably there's scientists all over the world that are mad at me because of doing that. But and then I started this company to bring through the exercise of phenomenal, great experiences that are positive for humanity, that encourage communication and interaction, that defragment the human experience and attract masses to that slowly humanity really wants to go there. It does not want to be about diatribe and toxicity and dispute and all that. That is just circumstantial. But there's so much money being made there by the large social media companies and others in the media companies that's what's emphasized today in our society. I want to make situations like this moment, Dr. Flores, that you and I that never met before have this opportunity to chat and share our ideas with each other. That's constructing humanity. The rest deconstructs humanity. And that's the motivation of Mass Luminosity.
Forgive me if I call it wishful thinking, right? But what we see in everyday life is everybody benefiting from from the reactions that people have, right? And so I wonder how we move away from that kind of environment that is driving the economy.
Right. Well, I think difficult problems have simple solutions. That's just my theory. And I think that it comes from just offering something different. We own a social media community called G Tribe, has 5.5 million people. There's no advertising. So there's no motivation from our point to be getting people to talk about nonsense and all that. And what happens when people have the opportunity to connect, and someday somebody's going to do a research on the community of G Tribe. I promise that's going to happen, because there's people from all over the world, from every country on the planet, that get along. They help each other. That when somebody's in necessity, they go out of their way to try to help them, just because they were given the opportunity, Dr. Flores, to do it. They weren't even told to do it. Just the opportunity to be nice to other human beings. That is in our nature. That's who we really are. But right now, because there's so many billions of dollars invested in the worst of our nature, that's all we see. But really, I can tell you that I've already done it with this community. So we started this. We've never promoted it. We've never bought a single ad to promote our community, and people found their way there. It's like, build it and they will come.
Yeah.
And so that's what I think that's what we need to do. Build a reverse. Build it. And then I can tell you that people will actually find their way there, because that's what we all want. We want to get along. We want to get to know each other. There's so much gratifying feelings in the exploration of another human being.
Yeah.
And that's where I stand. And, led by that, I wanted to also make online communication to be more natural, less fatiguing, less cumbersome. And that's why I created Beacon, which is our another product that we have in our company, Mass Luminosity.
Yeah. And I think there are communities like the ones that you're mentioning. I've never been on G Tribe, but in my younger days, I was part of a community called Couch Surfing. And it's a community for travelers, for mostly backpackers, but people who offer their couches, right? And I used it when I was in Europe, and most of the people I know that I've told this story think I'm crazy, because it can be very dangerous for somebody to go into somebody's house that they never met and then just crashing at their place. But I had the best experiences, and always thought there is it's a community for travelers from travelers. And so the hope is that we don't screw it up for everybody else, is that we keep it safe and we open our doors to just meeting more people and helping people explore the world.
Yeah, fear is the number one impediment when it comes to human relationships, because the media tends to emphasize the negative. For example, I'll give you one clear example of that. People that drive cars every day, it's a number one killer. There's accidents all the time and all that. Tesla's had 18 accidents. And each one of them is maximized to the max to have that fear, to create that fear that, these, crazy robots are on the road and killing people and crashing into cars. And so it's really the media, since the media has become a form of entertainment. Since news reporting has become a form of entertainment, then you can't rely on it for facts. So it becomes really obscure what is a fact and what is not. And what is a fact to me is that, that the more negative the story, the more we fear, the more they profit, because you want to read it. It's an impulse buy if they tell you something that it elicits a feeling of fear, and then you buy it and you're like, oh my God, what's going on with this now? And I don't know that a society that's driven on adrenaline and all these other hormones that we secrete that are negative is a positive society. I think we need balance. And that's what we intend to do with Mass Luminosity. Just balance the equation a little bit. We don't want to substitute it. People are always going to be attracted by their curiosity to crazy stories, but at least you have an oasis that you can go to and breathe once in a while. So
that's great.
So that's the thinking behind it, Dr. Flores.
So you have created multiple companies now, and I'm sure you have plenty of experience with hiring people. How do you choose the people that work for you?
So the question narrows it a little bit. So let me just say that before you even hire a person into your company, you need to define what the DNA of the company is. Okay? And in our case, I keep it right here at my desk, and we have several principles that we abide by. And for example, I'll read you a couple of them. It says, this is for Mass Luminosity. I did this before I hired a person. So I wanted to define in my mind what Mass Luminosity would be. And it's the first one. We're in the business of helping people, period. Okay, number one. Number two, we say what we mean and we do what we say. We act with integrity. That's two. Mm-hmm. Three, we embrace change in a DNA of curiosity. We think big and take chances. So by defining those, then you want to look for people that reflect those principles, right? That you meet them right away and you can tell that they're going to that they're going to expand and they're going to grow in that type of environment. I mean, there are other principles on that page, but I just gave you the top three. And so for me, it's just identifying who fits into that kind of mentality. And there's a test period that you have to put people through. You have to make it difficult for them, because if you make it easy from the beginning, then they don't get the flavor of how beautiful it is to be in this environment. So when we hire people, we always make it a little bit tough for them they have to work a little harder and a little bit more, with a little bit more purpose. And then all of a sudden they realize it's like a moment of samadhi or a moment of total revelation, where they realize, oh my God, I'm surrounded by wonderful people that are sincere and honest and hardworking. So, and it's just such a great moment for them. And then one of the things that we have is we have zero turnover. So when we hire someone, they never want to leave. It's incredible. So, and it's because also they feel like they're part of a family. And since we're purpose driven, people want to have a sense of life. Where are we going? What are we trying to do? How are we going to impact society? These are the important questions that companies should propose and pass on to their employees and staff members.
So one of the things that you've shared is that you don't require your employees to move to maybe Dallas, for example, or to be present in a physical location to work for the company. Rather, they can work from wherever they are already located. And you're saying, defining the DNA and creating a culture for the company is important. How do you do that when everybody is remote, or when a lot of people are remote?
I don't know that proximity actually helps that. So first of all, I'm not sure. Our company does not have offices at all. Mm-hmm. And we've been in business now for almost 11 years, and we don't have offices. We all work out of where we want to work. And when you have a company that has a living spirit, that you can feel it, you don't need proximity. You need. We have a saying in our company that giving that we pursue bits over atoms. So bits are the DNA of information, what composes the internet, let's say, and then atoms is what composes matter. And I find it very inefficient to move matter around. To travel, to keep alive, to do that. Matter to me seems old and archaic, and I'm all about the bits. I'm all about the streaming of a personality. And to answer your question in practical terms, that's one of the reasons that we created Beacon, because we were working on Beacon for the last 6 years because we wanted to bring everybody together. So sometimes. Let's say, for example, the software engineers, they're all working in different locations, but we're on Beacon, not even talking, just working, just to feel the presence of another person. And it works perfectly. And so there's no reason, I find no reason, Dr. Flores, to put everybody into one location. I understand that that's the way that companies operate. I just don't see it. I think that's the past. I think the future is you live and where you want to live. That's your choice to make. And as long as we're connected and pursuing the same reality, that's great. Another thing, no one in our company gets paid by the hour. No one, not one single person. They get paid, period. So why? Because who wants to account for moments of lives and for time? That is just so 18th century. We are all motivated by accomplishment. And when we accomplish, we get recognized. So so you have to, it's not easy. You have to kind of make a hard right turn to land where I'm at. Yeah. And we have no problems.
And the pandemic has made it clear that virtual spaces are a key component of our society, and something that will continue to influence the way we live. What would be your advice for people who may want to develop a career in the technology space?
I would say that they need to be quick and they need to be accurate, because technology grows exponentially and it changes constantly. And so you have to strike fast and you have to be accurate in that strike. As far as what you need personally to be able to do that is you need to know the industry really well that you're going to approach. We like in our society to celebrate these companies that like Twitter and, all these things and TikTok now and all that have become very, very large very quickly. Those are the exceptions to the rule. Most companies linger in a substandard level to that, and they still are successful. So I would say pursue your dream. Of course, that's a basic. Pursue your dream, but analyze the industry. And if you think you have something that is better and you can develop it, strike fast because somebody else is thinking the same thing somewhere else.
And so the last question I have for you, it's a fun one. So imagine a friend of yours comes to your city and they want you to show them around, but unfortunately you're not going to be around to show them. What are top 3 places or things that you would recommend them to do while they are in your city?
I think that everybody that comes to Dallas has to see the grassy knoll. They have to walk around. I think it's called Dealey Plaza. That's where a president was shot dead. I think it's important for people to see it. It's quite unique. It was a history-changing moment. And I remember I was a kid. I remember it. I remember my parents crying. And then to go there and to sort of have respect for that moment, I think it's important. There's also so what Dallas has is that it has different parks, and one of them is called Clyde Warren Park. You can have lunch and go on the patio, or you can eat from these food trucks that are allowed to go on the side of it. And then there's 2 museums close by. There's the Dallas Museum of Art, which happens to be free, and there's also the Nasher Sculpture Center on the other side. So I like that. That would be what I would recommend the most. That's the second thing to do. You could also go to it's called Katy Trail. Excuse me. It's called the Ice House. And you walk through the Katy Trail, and then you sit outdoors in this rustic sort of environment, and you have live music, and it's great for the afternoon or evening, and those are more simple things that you can do that I think kind of give you the flavor of what it is to live in Dallas, Texas. So those will be my 3 recommendations.
Perfect. I've only been to one of those places that you've recommended, so I look forward to...
Which one was it?
I guess the place where the president got shot.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I just really think that you taking the time, Dr. Flores, to spend with me and let me talk about my ideas that that is such a wonderful thing. I wanted to, before you even end the show, I wanted to thank you for this opportunity. For your audience to know, I had to go through a vetting process to be on the show. So this is not like you hop on the show, and I really appreciate the opportunity to sort of talk about how I see the world. And thank you for that, Dr. Flores.
No, thank you for joining us on the show today.
Well, you're welcome.
Thank you for listening. If you want to put a face to the voices you just heard, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Latinx Can. If you have questions or feedback, you can email us at latinxcan@gmail.com. And if you want to support our project, please leave a review. We have made it easy for you and added the links to the show notes. That's it for now. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and remember, unidos somos más.